So 3 major things that we're going to focus on today. The first one is technique. The second one is different styles. And then the last one, which kind of all of this wraps up within, is musicality, sensitivity, dynamics, using different tools to help dynamically, those kinds of things. Now, of course, technique is kind of a part of all of that. Okay? Without technique, we can't express what we want to express. You know, I always tell the story of seeing, if you guys know who Vinnie Colaiuta is, a drummer. Fantastic drummer. He's probably the only person I've ever seen play who anything that happens in context of what he's playing, he can respond to. He has just crazy technique. But yet he uses it in such a way that is so musical and so deep in what he does. And so in a worship context, we can't be sitting there thinking about, okay, am I playing this exactly right, this note, and over here in this note, and is my hand in the right position? We can't be thinking about that stuff in that context, because then we're not focusing on what we're there to do, which is to lead the congregation into worship and to worship ourselves. So technique, super, super important. So I'm going to break it down as simple as we can make it. So in drumming, we have 3 strokes. That's it. Single strokes, double strokes, buzz strokes. Okay? Everything is going to be a combination of those things. Single strokes, double strokes, buzz strokes. And so we have to spend time on each one of those in order to have that facility to be able to play what we want to play. So just in showing you basically, I mean, everybody I think knows what single strokes are. They're single strokes. So I'm playing right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Okay? And that's single strokes. Double strokes. So I'm playing 2 per hand. All right? So I'm doubling. Buzz strokes. So a buzz stroke roll. That's buzz strokes. Okay, so all that's well and good, and everyone should spend time on all 3 of those. Okay? Now I'm not going to go through a whole deal on each one of those. I actually have a series of videos, which the links are on the paper that we hand out, that do go through each one of those and talk about some technical facility of how to develop single strokes and to be able to play them with your wrist and your fingers and all that good stuff. Same as double strokes, same as buzz strokes. What I wanted to show today is how we apply that just in basic beat kind of stuff. So if I'm playing single strokes, obviously a basic rock beat, right, is single strokes. And if I do, all that is single strokes, all right? I'm just playing hands together. So now double strokes, a great example of double strokes, and I play these all the time, is so I'm just playing doubles on the hi-hat, right? Another way of doubles is like on fills. So all those are double strokes. So I'm just now the challenge with those is it's hard to play double strokes on a floor tom because it doesn't bounce like a snare drum, right? So I got to work. If you noticed, I cheated and I turn over this way just because I can play double strokes faster this way. But so I'm using my fingers to get those doubles, all right? So double strokes are super important, again, for the beat stuff, but also for fill kind of a things. It gives you just more tools in our tool chest in order to be able to play things, all right? Buzz strokes, you may think, okay, context of buzz strokes. I mean, yeah, you're going to go, that's buzz strokes. Yeah, that's true. But there's a lot of different things that you can do. So, for example, of playing in that kind of a style where you're using buzz strokes and using little notes. So, like if I'm playing something where I want it to be very round, all right? Buzz strokes are round. Single strokes, when I go, is that very round sounding? No, it's very this sounding, not this sounding, right? If I play buzzes, there's no this, it's more, right? It's that kind of a thing. So if I play that in the context of a beat, So I get this kind of a thing. This is a song called Holy Spirit. I hear this song this way. I know it's very arbitrary, but when you hear it, you'll know what I mean. I hear this sort of motion to that song. I don't hear this in what's going on musically. So the way I play it and express it is, to me, I want to play that way. I want to play more of that kind of a style. The original recording is pretty this. And again, it's not wrong or bad. It's just I personally feel it a little differently. And again, that's a whole separate conversation, which we'll talk about that. Let me play a little bit of it.
2,
and just kind of demonstrate
1,
using
2,
some of that sort of
3,
kind of stuff.
4. Verse.
There's nothing worth more that could ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence,
Verse.
I've tasted and seen of the sweetest of love, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. Your presence, Lord.
Chorus. All in. Verse.
There's nothing worth more that could ever come close. Nothing can compare. Oh, our living hope. Your
Verse. Chorus.
Hopefully you can hear that. You can hear that sort of washiness. So that's totally a technique thing, all right? If I didn't have the ability to play that kind of stuff, that I couldn't play that kind of stuff. So it's important for me to be able to say, okay, that's how I'm feeling in that song. So that's how I'm going to play that song, and I'm going to use those techniques to do that. So styles. So when I talk, this is another we could do a whole thing just on styles, but I just want to cover 3 basic styles, talk about the fundamentals of those styles, and why it's important to have those abilities to do that. The one thing I always say is to students and other folks that I've talked to about this kind of thing is that I don't think if you practice playing swing that you're going to go out and play in a jazz trio for your gig, and that's going to be your life, is playing as a jazz musician. But that's not the point. The point is those techniques are completely different from a rock approach, and so it adds depth to our playing. If you look at any great players that are out there, no matter what style, they're church folk, they're secular folk, whatever, great players have depth of style, have the ability to play in all different styles and make it sound right. That's the hard part. We can all play the basic rhythms of the styles, but to make it feel right and to make it sound right, that's sort of the next level. So I'm going to go through sort of the foundations of 3 basic styles, which are big, broad styles, but just to kind of give you some ideas. So in a rock style, I think probably most of us, that's what we're more familiar with. Kick drum, snare drum, that's our foundation, right? So our kick and our snare are sort of where it's at. No matter where we're at dynamically, that's going to be the most solid part of the beat. And then the other stuff kind of fills in. So just... So even if I change this up, I'm still zoom, ga. Bass drum and snare drum are my foundation, okay? Now, there's a lot of little in-betweens that we can do with that, a lot of subtleties that we can do, but bottom line is our bass drum and our snare drum is going to be where the foundation of the time and the groove and the feel is, all right? Now, we go to swing, and we flip that upside down. This is where people get in really big trouble because it's hard to flip that upside down, especially if you practiced all the time with... And then you go to play a swing beat, and this is my example of the way that always comes out. Okay? And that's not a swing beat, right? That doesn't work. And so when we play that style, the ride cymbal and the hi-hat become our foundation. This is where our time is. This is where our feel is. This is where all those things are. The bass drum almost becomes a nothing. It becomes more of an accent, more of a foundation of articulating little rhythms, things like that, same as our snare drum. The thing that this is always called is you're comping. So you're playing little rhythms that are accenting what's going on in the music with your left hand. You're not playing a backbeat. Again, rare exceptions. Sometimes like dance band kind of swing stuff, sometimes you play a backbeat, but for the most time, no. This is playing more little stuff, all right? So kind of like when I was playing that Holy Spirit song, that's that kind of technique of where I'm playing in that way. So if I play some swing stuff and listen to the difference, I'm going to play the bass drum, but it's what we call feathering the bass drum, okay? And so if we feather the bass drum, that's felt and not heard. That's the concept. And I'll play it with and without the bass drum so you can hear it. So 1, 2, 3... Okay, so you hear the difference in that? Now let me play the same thing without the bass drum. I'll take the bass drum in and out. It already sounds crappy without the bass drum, right? Let's put the bass drum back in. Out. In. But I'm barely playing it. Okay, so the bass drum, I'm like barely touching it. Again, feathering it. And like a feather, I'm just barely hitting it. But it is so important to the groove. Now, let's take this into context of what we do in a worship context. Again, you're probably not going to play that beat. But what would the ability to control the volume of your bass drum, how could that be a positive in a worship environment? I think it could be, right? Okay, so these are things that are techniques that allow us to interpret what we're playing in the context more musically, all right? Because that's hard to do, just FYI. Especially if you've been playing rock stuff for a long time, it's very difficult to play that right and to make it feel right and not get your bass drum too loud, because that's what happens. All right, so let's look at the Latin stuff. Latin stuff's kind of in between. The bass drum's still pretty important. The bass drum is kind of this foundation, and then we have this other stuff that goes on top. I'm just going to play like a basic samba beat. Now listen to what the bass drum does. So my bass drum and hi-hat are playing this boom, 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 boom thing. And then I'm playing that rhythm. Now these are 16th notes, but they don't sound like 16th notes. Here's real 16th notes. Do you hear the difference? Here's swung 16th notes in a Latin beat. Again, subtle, but hopefully you can hear that difference. Again, the way I explain it, I like shapes. That's very round, right? That groove is very round. If I play, which I have a hard time even playing, it hurts me, that's unround. That's more of this thing again, right? And if I play it, It's got this kind of thing going on. Hopefully you guys can feel that, right? It's sort of this kind of stuff, all right? So very, very different. So again, we're adding depth to our playing by being able to play these other styles. So there's a song that we play at church that I like to play it, throw a little bit of that in there. So I'll play a little samba bass drum on this tune. And let me play you the tune and show you why. A clave rhythm, right? So this is very Latin-y. So what I'll play, so do you see how that's it's a Latin groove, right? So I got all kinds of stuff going on there. I've got the Latin bass drum thing. I've got sort of this samba Brazilian thing on the floor tom. I've got all these little notes going on the snare drum. So I'm sort of taking it to another place. Now, the part, this is really important. The part that I want to make sure you're clear on is that's not me sitting around going, what creative thing can I do on this song? That's just in context, it comes out because I played that stuff and I have those techniques are just sort of the way I play and that becomes who I am. And so those kinds of beats, by default, that stuff's going to come out of me because that's who I am as a player. And so that's that fine line of we're going to try to capture the groove that's on the chart, on the song, but yet we're going to be who we are and we're going to express who we are. You know, one of the things I always say, I used to lead worship and I would play piano and I would have drummers and, you know, drummers, I'm kind of critical of drummers because I'm particular. And so I used to always say to my drummers, if I wanted it to be like the record, I'd just record it myself and play the track. But I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be you. I want to hear you. I want to hear who you are to come across in your playing. You know, and that's so important. And the only way you're going to be able to express yourself is to be able to have that foundation of technique and styles and all these things we're talking about. And then, of course, in the context of worship, to not have to be thinking about that, but just allow that to come out of you as you're expressing and you're worshiping God. To me, a beat like that sort of kicks things up a notch, as opposed to playing... Nothing wrong with this beat. But when I play what I feel, and I know 3-style things like that, there's like a lifetime of study in each one of those. So we got a lot of time we can talk about, but we don't have time to talk about that.